Royal Guard restrains Camilla's son after he punches Prince George in the face. The palace was alive with anticipation today, as a special event had drawn members of the royal family, dignitaries, and guests from near and far. Among the youngest attendees was Camilla's son, a boy full of energy, curiosity, and a natural sense of mischief that often made him the center of attention. He had always been spirited, his movements quick and his expressions animated, a stark contrast to the measured calm expected in royal circles. Camilla had been watching him closely as she guided him through the busy corridors, her hand lightly resting on his shoulder. She knew her son's energy could be both charming and challenging, especially in a place where protocol and decorum were so important. The young boy's eyes darted from one grand painting to another, taking in every detail of the ornate palace walls, gilded frames, and portraits of kings and queens who had walked these halls centuries before. There was something about the history around him that fascinated him, though he had no patience to stand still for too long. Today, however, was more than just a stroll through the palace. There was a special gathering for the children of the royal family, a rare occasion where they could play and interact outside the strict rules of formal ceremonies. Among them was young Prince George, who, at this age, was already developing the gentle confidence that seemed to come naturally to him. He moved through the crowd with ease, smiling at the attendants and waving at the occasional guest who took notice. His calm demeanor and cheerful nature made him a favorite among everyone who knew him, and he carried himself with a quiet grace that seemed beyond his years. Camilla's son, watching Prince George from a distance, felt a mixture of curiosity and competitive spirit. He wanted to join in the games, to show his strength and agility, and perhaps, in a childlike way, to prove that he could hold his own even among the most admired of young royals. His excitement bubbled over as he approached a small group of children gathered near a fountain, their laughter echoing through the marble halls. The boy's eyes sparkled with anticipation, and he couldn't wait to be part of the fun, even if it meant pushing his limits a little. The palace staff had worked meticulously to ensure the event ran smoothly. Attendants moved quietly behind the scenes, ready to guide the children or intervene if necessary. Royal guards, ever vigilant, watched the proceedings with unwavering attention. Their presence, though calm and professional, was a constant reminder that safety and order were of utmost importance. Camilla, aware of the watchful eyes around her, kept her son close but allowed him enough freedom to explore. She had always believed that children should be allowed to experience joy and play, even in such formal settings, as long as they were reminded of boundaries. The children's laughter grew louder as they engaged in simple games, chasing bubbles that floated across the courtyard, racing from one marble statue to another, and balancing along the low stone walls that framed the garden. Camilla's son darted through the crowd with impressive speed, his laughter mingling with the sounds of the other children. He felt alive in this moment, free from the constant attention of cameras and formalities, enjoying the simple pleasure of running, jumping, and playing. Prince George, noticing the lively boy approaching, gave a warm smile. He was naturally friendly, and his approach to play was gentle and inclusive. He waved his hand, inviting Camilla's son to join in a game of tag with the other children. The invitation was meant to be lighthearted, a gesture of friendship and fun, but it carried with it the innocence and unpredictability that only children can bring. The young boy accepted eagerly, his heart racing with excitement, unaware that his emotions were about to get the better of him. As the game began, the palace grounds seemed to come alive with energy. Children darted around, weaving through pillars and fountains, their voices blending into a symphony of joy. Camilla watched from a distance, her eyes following her son's every move. She could see the gleam of determination in his eyes, the way he moved with quick, precise steps, and the occasional impatient frown that crossed his face when things didn't go exactly as he planned. She knew him well enough to sense that his enthusiasm, if unchecked, could easily turn into frustration. In a quieter corner, Prince George laughed as he tried to tag one of his friends. His movements were careful and measured, yet full of the same innocent excitement that made all the children's games so unpredictable. Camilla's son, noticing an opportunity to win the game, quickened his pace. He wanted to prove himself, to show that he could catch anyone and be the fastest among the children. His mind was focused entirely on the game, his awareness of the palace rules and decorum slipping away in the thrill of the moment. The attendants, though nearby, let the children play freely. They understood that this brief moment of spontaneity was important for the young royals, a chance to be children before the weight of tradition and expectations settled back upon them. The royal guards, stationed at discreet points around the gardens, maintained their watchful eyes, ready to step in if necessary, but hoping the children's play would remain lighthearted and safe. As the game continued, Camilla's son found himself in a small crowd of children, all laughing and jostling in friendly competition. His competitive spirit flared, and he became determined to win at all costs. In the midst of the excitement, a minor bump or misunderstanding could easily happen. Children were unpredictable, their emotions sometimes overwhelming their ability to pause and think. The palace, despite its grandeur and elegance, was not immune to the natural chaos that came when young children played together. Camilla's son, caught up in the moment, began to move more aggressively in his attempts to tag Prince George. He didn't mean any real harm. His intentions were only to succeed in the game. Yet, the combination of excitement, impatience, and natural impulsiveness set the stage for a sudden clash. In the blink of an eye, a playful push became something more forceful, surprising everyone nearby. The shift was subtle but noticeable, an instinctive reaction, a child's energy getting out of control for just a moment. Camilla, sensing the change immediately, felt a surge of concern. She hurried toward her son, her heart pounding as she anticipated the possibility of trouble. Her maternal instincts kicked in, and she silently urged him to pause, to calm himself before the situation escalated. At the same time, Prince George, still laughing and unaware, continued his playful movements, not expecting any sudden aggression. The scene was tense now, even if no one had fully realized it yet. The royal guards, noticing the shift in energy among the children, instinctively began to move closer. Their presence, calm yet commanding, served as a quiet reminder that even in moments of play, safety could not be compromised. Camilla's son felt the sudden tension in the air, his excitement mixing with a touch of nervousness. He slowed for a fraction of a second, only to be swept back into the momentum of the game, unable to resist the rush of competing with his peers. As the children continued to run and weave through the gardens, the palace staff subtly repositioned themselves to ensure that everyone remained safe. The event, though designed for carefree enjoyment, carried with it the constant awareness that accidents could happen at any moment. Camilla whispered gently to her son as she approached, her words meant to calm him, to remind him to channel his energy in a positive way. For a brief moment, all seemed under control again. The children laughed, the sun shone brightly over the palace, and the gardens seemed to echo with the innocent joy of play. Yet beneath the surface, the combination of excitement, competitiveness, and youthful impulsiveness was like a spark in dry grass, ready to ignite if not handled carefully. Camilla's son, in his eagerness to succeed in the game, was on the edge of testing the limits of what was acceptable, unaware of how quickly a small misstep could escalate. The first part of the day's events highlighted the delicate balance of raising children in the royal spotlight. Camilla, watching her son with both pride and caution, understood the challenges of ensuring that youthful energy did not turn into trouble. Prince George, equally unaware of the impending moment, continued to play with natural charm, his innocence shielding him from the tension that was slowly building. The palace grounds, beautiful and serene as they appeared, were quietly bracing for a moment that would test everyone's ability to maintain calm and order while allowing the children to simply be children. And in that balance between excitement and control, between freedom and responsibility, the scene was set for a surprising and unforgettable moment, one that would test not just the children but the adults around them in ways they could never have anticipated. The sun climbed. Higher in the sky, casting warm light over the palace gardens where laughter and the soft shuffle of tiny feet filled the air. Camilla's son continued to run among the children, his excitement growing with every step. His earlier energy had not waned. Instead, it had shifted into a sharp focus on the game he was playing. Every child seemed to be moving faster, their laughter mixing with the sound of playful shouts and claps. It was a perfect day for children to be children, yet the palace's history and grandeur made the excitement feel almost surreal. Prince George, unaware of the growing tension, ran with a bright smile across his face. He loved these moments when he could be free, unburdened by the usual rules of royal life. For him, it was simple joy, running, laughing, and trying to keep up with friends who were equally full of life. His movements were light and careful, as if he sensed the importance of balance even in play, but his focus was entirely on the fun of the moment. Camilla's son, however, was caught in a different kind of excitement. The thrill of winning, of being the fastest, and of showing his skill had grown in intensity. Each time another child outran him or dodged his attempt to tag them, he felt a spark of frustration. The feeling was new and confusing. He had never experienced this kind of competition so intensely. His brows furrowed and his pace quickened. The world around him seemed to blur into the motion of running and chasing, and he barely noticed the guards who had been quietly observing the children from a distance. The game had reached its peak energy. Children weaved around fountains, slipped between statues, and ducked beneath the low garden walls. Camilla's son moved with sharp, determined steps, his focus locked on reaching his goal. His small hands clenched in determination, and his mind, normally bright and playful, had narrowed to a single thought: he needed to win. This intense focus made him less aware of the other children nearby, including Prince George, who had wandered slightly off the main group, laughing as he tried to dodge another friend. At that moment, a minor collision became inevitable. Camilla's son, moving faster than he had before, miscalculated a turn and ran straight toward Prince George. The young prince, laughing and looking back at his friend, did not notice the sudden approach. Time seemed to slow for the adults nearby. Camilla's eyes widened as she realized her son was moving too quickly, and the palace guards instinctively began to step forward, their trained reflexes preparing them to intervene if necessary. The impact was sudden but not severe. Camilla's son, caught in the excitement and frustration of the game, unintentionally bumped into Prince George. The sound of a small thud drew gasps from some of the children, who stopped their play for a brief moment. Prince George stumbled slightly, surprised, but his reaction was calm. He looked at the boy with wide eyes, confused more than hurt, and tried to step back to regain his balance. The moment was delicate, one that could have escalated if not handled carefully. Camilla rushed forward immediately, her heart pounding. She placed a gentle hand on her son's shoulder, guiding him away from the prince. "It's okay," she said softly, though her voice carried a note of warning. "Be careful." "That's enough for now." Her son's eyes met hers, full of embarrassment and a hint of confusion. He hadn't meant to hurt anyone, his energy had simply carried him too far. Camilla knelt slightly, looking into his face, her expression calm but firm. "You need to think before you act, even when you're having fun," she reminded him. The royal guards, now fully attentive, stepped closer to ensure that no child was in danger. They were always prepared for any situation, and today, their role was as much about keeping the children safe as it was about maintaining order. They positioned themselves in a subtle circle around the young royals, ready to step in if needed, but careful not to interfere unnecessarily. Their calm presence reassured the adults and children alike, and it reminded everyone that the palace, despite its beauty and history, required care and attention. Prince George, showing his gentle nature, waved off any concern. He rubbed his shoulder where he had been bumped and gave a small, reassuring smile. "I'm okay," he said, his voice calm and cheerful. His response helped to ease the tension slightly, though the adults knew that young children's emotions could change quickly. Camilla's son looked at the prince, realizing for the first time that his actions had consequences beyond the game. A wave of remorse washed over him, and he lowered his head, unsure of what to say. The attendants moved quietly through the crowd, subtly guiding the children back to a safer area of the gardens. The game was paused, and the atmosphere shifted from pure excitement to one of careful supervision. Camilla stayed close to her son, placing a reassuring hand on his back. "It's all right," she said again. "You didn't mean to cause any trouble. But remember, everyone has feelings, and we must be gentle with each other." Her words were soft yet filled with authority, a reminder that kindness and control were equally important. As the children settled, Camilla's son began to process what had happened. The rush of adrenaline from the game had faded, leaving behind a quiet nervousness. He thought about Prince George's calm reaction and the surprise of the attendants and guards. For the first time, he truly understood that being fast, strong, or competitive was not the same as being considerate. It was a new feeling, a lesson learned in the simplest yet most powerful way, through experience. The palace gardens, which had moments ago been filled with wild laughter, now carried a softer tone. The children still talked and moved around, but the pace was slower. They were curious and aware that something had shifted, though they did not fully understand the details. Adults around them, including Camilla and the staff, maintained a watchful but calm presence, guiding the young ones while allowing them the freedom to learn from their own experiences. Camilla's son, now calmer, sat for a moment on a stone bench, his legs swinging slightly. He watched Prince George from a distance, noticing how he had returned to a game with another child, smiling as if nothing had happened. That simple act of forgiveness struck him deeply. He realized that even when mistakes were made, the way others responded could shape the outcome. The prince's kindness made him reflect on how he could handle his own feelings next time. The royal guards continued their quiet supervision, their eyes scanning the gardens but never intruding. They understood that children's emotions were unpredictable, and that guidance sometimes worked better when it was calm and patient rather than strict or forceful. Their experience taught them that a child's moment of learning was often more effective when adults provided space and subtle guidance rather than immediate correction. Camilla's son slowly got up from the bench and approached a small flower bed. He carefully touched the petals of the brightly colored flowers, taking a moment to focus on something gentle and calming. His mind, once filled with the rush of energy, was now turning inward, reflecting on his behavior and the feelings of others. Camilla watched him with pride and relief. He was learning a valuable lesson, one that could shape how he interacted with friends and family in the future. Prince George, noticing the boy's quiet moment, came over with a small smile. He extended a hand as if to say, "It's okay." The gesture was simple, yet it carried immense meaning. Camilla's son hesitated for a moment, then took the prince's hand. A small nod passed between them, a silent understanding and mutual respect forming in that brief exchange. The tension melted, replaced by a new sense of calm and connection. The attendants encouraged the children to gather for a short snack break. Cups of juice and small pastries were offered, and the children slowly sat on the grass or along low benches. Conversations were gentle, filled with laughter that was softer but sincere. Camilla's son and Prince George sat near each other, sharing a quiet moment of companionship. They talked about the game, their favorite flowers in the garden, and small stories from their daily lives. The bond that had been tested earlier now began to strengthen, built on understanding, forgiveness, and shared experiences. Camilla remained nearby, observing her son with a gentle smile. She knew that growing up in a royal environment came with challenges that other children might never face. Lessons in patience, respect, and empathy were as important as lessons in academics or etiquette. Today had provided one such lesson, a real-life experience that could not be taught in books or through formal instruction. Her son had learned the importance of self-control, the impact of actions on others, and the power of kindness. The palace grounds, once filled with tension, were now peaceful again. Birds chirped softly from the nearby trees, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. The sunlight created patterns on the marble paths, casting a serene glow over the children and adults alike. Camilla's son sat quietly for a few moments, thinking about everything that had happened, and then looked up at his mother with a small smile. She returned it warmly, proud of how he was processing the day's events. As the children resumed their play, it was with a renewed sense of awareness. Camilla's son moved carefully, mindful of others, but still full of energy and joy. Prince George laughed freely, enjoying the fun while demonstrating patience and grace. The palace, with all its grandeur and history, had become a place of learning, growth, and friendship, a setting where a small incident had turned into a meaningful lesson for young hearts. The remainder of the morning passed with laughter, light games, and moments of quiet reflection. Camilla's son had learned the delicate balance between excitement and control, action and thought, fun and responsibility. Prince George had shown that even in moments of surprise, kindness could guide a child through unexpected situations. And the palace, standing tall and magnificent, had witnessed another small but important story. A story of growth, understanding, and the tender complexities of childhood within the royal family. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the palace gardens, turning the marble pathways into a warm patchwork of light and shade. Children's laughter echoed softly through the courtyards, blending with the occasional chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. Camilla's son had regained much of his earlier calm after the morning's incident, but the energy that always bubbled inside him was far from gone. He ran lightly across the soft grass, weaving between groups of children playing tag and hide-and-seek, his eyes bright with excitement. Prince George, seated near a fountain with a few friends, was watching the water shimmer in the sunlight. He had just taken a sip of juice and was leaning back slightly, laughing at a small story a friend had told. His smile was easy and carefree, reflecting the innocence of a child who was completely absorbed in the joy of the day. Camilla's son noticed him from a distance and felt a sudden urge to show off, a playful competitiveness sparking inside him again. He wanted to catch Prince George in the game, to demonstrate his speed and skill in front of his peers. The palace staff, who had been quietly supervising the children, continued to move discreetly around the gardens. They made sure every child was safe, while allowing them the freedom to explore and play. The royal guards remained stationed at key points, their presence subtle but reassuring. They were trained to handle any situation swiftly, but today, their job was largely to observe and guide, hoping that the children's natural curiosity and excitement would stay harmless. As Camilla's son approached the fountain, he noticed that Prince George had stood up and was preparing to join another game. The sight triggered a wave of anticipation in him. He quickened his pace, determined to reach the prince first. At the same time, he felt the faint stirring of frustration that had appeared earlier. His desire to win, mixed with impatience, created a tension that was difficult for him to control. He did not mean to cause trouble, yet the intensity of his focus blinded him to the boundaries around him. The children's laughter grew louder as they began another round of tag, darting between flower beds and running along the garden paths. Camilla's son weaved through the crowd, his movements sharp and fast. Every step was calculated, though his youthful energy made him unpredictable. He could feel the eyes of some of the children on him, watching as he tried to outmaneuver them. The playful spirit of the game, once lighthearted and innocent, had begun to carry a subtle edge. Prince George, noticing a friend calling his name, turned quickly and began to run across the lawn. Camilla's son, intent on tagging him first, increased his speed. The two boys moved toward each other, each unaware of how close they were to colliding. The palace seemed to hold its breath for a moment, the air filled with the suspense of what might happen next. Adults nearby exchanged glances, sensing the energy rising but trusting that the situation would remain under control. In a sudden burst of motion, Camilla's son reached out to touch the prince's shoulder, a gesture meant to tag him in the game. At the same time, Prince George turned slightly, surprised by the sudden approach. The two boys collided gently, and for a brief moment the world seemed to pause. Gasps rippled through the group of children, while Camilla's eyes widened in alarm. She immediately stepped forward, moving toward her son with a mixture of concern and urgency. The royal guards, sensing the possibility of further escalation, quickened their pace. They were trained for moments like this, when quick action could prevent accidents or misunderstandings. Two guards moved smoothly to position themselves between the boys, their calm and professional demeanor reassuring the adults and children nearby. They reached Camilla's son first, gently placing a hand on his shoulder to guide him away from the prince without startling him. Camilla knelt down to her son's level, speaking in a calm but firm tone. "It's all right," she said, her eyes locking with his. "You're okay. But remember, everyone's safety matters, even when you're having fun." Her voice was steady, offering comfort while reinforcing the lesson he had been learning all morning. Her son's shoulders sagged slightly, the adrenaline of the chase giving way to a quiet understanding of what had just occurred. Prince George, ever gracious, smiled gently. "It's okay," he said softly, brushing his hands along his sides as if nothing had happened. His calm reaction helped to diffuse the tension instantly, and Camilla's son felt a mix of relief and shame. He realized that while he had been caught up in the excitement of the game, he had also overlooked the feelings and safety of others. It was a new and important lesson, one that he would remember for a long time. The attendants, sensing that the children needed a pause, subtly guided them toward a shaded area beneath the tall trees at the edge of the garden. Here, small tables were set up with juice and light snacks, and the children slowly gathered, some still giggling while others were quieter, reflecting on the earlier events. Camilla's son joined his mother at one of the benches, his legs swinging lightly as he sipped his juice. She smiled at him, knowing that these moments of reflection were just as important as the moments of play. The palace gardens, normally a scene of perfect order, now carried a gentle hum of activity and conversation. Children talked about the games they had played, sharing laughs and stories. Camilla's son watched Prince George laughing with his friends, his heart warming at the sight. He realized that even though he had acted impulsively, forgiveness and understanding could turn a mistake into a chance for growth and friendship. Royal guards continued their quiet watch, ensuring that no child wandered too far or acted recklessly. Their presence, while subtle, offered a sense of security. Camilla's son noticed them occasionally, their calm demeanor reminding him of the importance of structure and rules. While he wanted to be free and playful, he now understood that certain boundaries were in place to protect everyone, including himself. As the afternoon progressed, the children began another round of games, this time with a slower and more careful approach. Camilla's son approached Prince George, smiling and gesturing to include him in a new activity. Prince George nodded eagerly, glad to see his young friend joining him with renewed energy and awareness. The boys ran across the grass together, laughing freely, but moving with a newfound mindfulness that reflected the lessons of the morning. The attendants moved around the tables, quietly replenishing snacks and observing the children with attentive eyes. They knew that accidents could happen in seconds, but they also understood the importance of allowing the children to learn through experience. Each child had their own personality and way of processing events, and the adults aimed to guide them gently without overshadowing their growth. Camilla's son, sitting briefly to rest, reflected on his feelings. He had experienced excitement, frustration, fear, and now relief, all within a few hours. The mix of emotions was confusing, but he recognized that it was normal. He looked at Prince George and noticed how calm and kind he remained, despite the earlier collision. It was a small but powerful example of patience and understanding, showing him that reacting with kindness could change the outcome of any situation. The group of children slowly formed a circle, preparing for a quiet storytelling session led by one of the attendants. Each child took turns sharing small experiences or talking about what they enjoyed in the palace gardens. Camilla's son listened carefully, absorbing the words and gestures of his friends. The stories were simple, yet they carried lessons about sharing, listening, and the joy of friendship. He realized that these small moments were just as meaningful as the games, perhaps even more so because they taught empathy and understanding. Prince George shared a story about a small bird he had seen near the palace fountain, describing how it had flown gracefully across the gardens. The children listened intently, imagining the bird's flight, and Camilla's son felt a sense of calm wash over him. The earlier excitement, the chase, and the collision now felt like a memory he could learn from, rather than an ongoing source of tension. Camilla knelt beside her son again, offering quiet guidance. "You see," she said softly, "even when things go wrong, we can make them right. And we can learn from them too." Her words were simple, but their meaning was profound. Camilla's son nodded, understanding that mistakes were not failures, they were opportunities to grow, to show kindness, and to become more thoughtful in the future. The sun began to descend, casting a soft golden glow over the palace gardens. Shadows stretched longer, and the air grew cooler, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. The children, including Camilla's son and Prince George, continued to play quietly, their movements gentle and mindful. Laughter still echoed softly, but it was tempered with awareness and care for one another. The royal guards remained vigilant but relaxed, their presence a steady reassurance to the adults and children alike. Camilla observed her son with pride, seeing how he had transformed from a boy caught in the thrill of the moment to one who was learning patience, empathy, and self-control. She knew that these lessons, though subtle, would stay with him throughout his life, shaping how he approached challenges and relationships. As the afternoon drew to a close, the children gathered their belongings and prepared to leave the gardens. Camilla's son walked beside her, holding her hand gently, a small smile on his face. Prince George waved goodbye, his cheerful nature intact, leaving behind a sense of calm and friendship that would last beyond the day. The palace, with its history and grandeur, had once again been a setting for learning and growth, a place where even the smallest incident could teach the most valuable lessons. The palace gardens were quieter now, the energy of the day having softened into a calm afternoon. Camilla's son walked slowly beside his mother, his steps thoughtful. The earlier excitement and tension from the games had faded, replaced by a reflective calm. He glanced around at the familiar paths, the fountains glimmering in the sunlight, and the flowers swaying gently in the breeze. Everything felt peaceful, yet he carried with him the memory of the morning and early afternoon, the lessons that had already begun to shape his understanding of the world around him. Camilla noticed the small change in her son's demeanor. He had grown quieter, more aware, and his eyes carried a hint of contemplation that had not been there before. She reached out to hold his hand gently, feeling the warmth of his small palm. "It's been a big day for you," she said softly, her voice full of care. "You've learned a lot today, more than just about running or winning. You've learned about thinking, about how your actions affect others." Her son nodded slowly, realizing the truth in her words. The excitement of the game, the chase, and even the brief collision with Prince George had shown him that every action had consequences. He remembered the prince's calm reaction, the way he had smiled and forgiven without hesitation. That moment had left a lasting impression, teaching him about patience, kindness, and understanding in a way that words alone could never convey. They continued walking through the palace gardens, passing the familiar marble statues and carefully trimmed hedges. Children were now gathered near the shade of large trees, sharing stories and laughing softly. Some were drawing in the dirt with small sticks, while others collected flowers to press between the pages of their notebooks. Camilla's son paused to watch, appreciating the simple joy and creativity that had returned to the young royals. He realized that fun did not have to be loud or competitive. It could be gentle, shared, and thoughtful. Prince George approached him, a small grin on his face, holding out a tiny flower he had picked from the garden. "Here," he said, offering it as a gesture of friendship. Camilla's son accepted it, his face lighting up with a shy smile. In that quiet moment, the tension of earlier incidents melted away completely. He understood that friendships could recover quickly when built on understanding and empathy. He also realized that mistakes were not permanent. They were opportunities to learn and to grow closer to others. The attendants moved among the children, offering snacks and juice, encouraging calm play and gentle conversation. Camilla's son sat with his mother for a moment, sipping juice and watching the other children. The taste of the sweet drink was comforting, but it was the quiet and the sense of connection that truly brought him peace. He reflected on the day's events, thinking about how his emotions had sometimes taken control and how he could handle them better in the future. The royal guards, still present but relaxed, observed the children with a steady and reassuring watchfulness. Their presence reminded Camilla's son of the importance of safety and responsibility. He realized that boundaries were not meant to restrict fun. They were there to protect everyone and ensure that play could continue without harm. The thought gave him a sense of respect for the adults who cared for them, the ones who worked quietly behind the scenes to make sure the palace was not only beautiful but safe for all. Camilla spoke gently to her son, kneeling to be at his level. "Do you understand what happened today?" she asked. "Not just what you did, but why it mattered." He nodded, thinking carefully. "Yes," he replied. "I ran too fast. I didn't think about Prince George, but he wasn't upset. And I learned that I should be careful." She smiled warmly, proud of his reflection. "Exactly," she said. "Being careful doesn't mean you can't have fun. It means you are aware and kind at the same time. That's very important." The children slowly gathered for a short break near a shaded bench, where they shared small stories from the day. Camilla's son listened closely, amazed at how everyone had different experiences and reactions. He began to understand that each child, just like himself, had feelings, and that paying attention to them could make play much more enjoyable and safe. It was a lesson in empathy that went beyond mere rules. It was about understanding hearts and minds, even when words were few. Prince George sat next to him, talking softly about the games and the birds he had seen near the fountains. Camilla's son smiled, joining the conversation, careful to speak kindly and listen attentively. For the first time that day, he felt a true sense of connection, a bond of friendship that had grown stronger because of what had happened earlier. The collision, the misunderstanding, and the intervention of the adults had all contributed to a deeper understanding between the two young royals. The afternoon continued with quieter games, collecting flowers, counting the patterns on the marble floors, and observing the birds near the fountains. Camilla's son participated eagerly, but this time with mindfulness. He noticed where he placed his hands, how he moved among the other children, and how his actions affected those around him. He realized that being part of a group meant more than winning. It meant being aware, considerate, and responsible. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting a warm golden glow across the gardens, Camilla's son felt a sense of calm satisfaction. The day had been full of excitement, challenges, and lessons. He had experienced a wide range of emotions: joy, frustration, surprise, and finally reflection. He understood now that his actions, even when unintentional, could affect others, and that responding with kindness could make a big difference. Camilla gently guided him toward the palace entrance, where their carriage awaited to take them home. Along the way, she continued to speak softly, reinforcing the lessons of the day. "Remember," she said, "every day is an opportunity to learn. Mistakes happen, but what matters is how you respond. You can choose to be thoughtful, kind, and careful. That is what makes you strong, not just speed or skill." Her son listened intently, nodding. He felt a quiet pride in himself, a sense that he had grown a little wiser and more aware in just one day. Prince George waved from the courtyard, his cheerful nature intact. Camilla's son waved back, a smile spreading across his face. The earlier incident was no longer a source of embarrassment or tension. It had become a shared memory, a moment of growth and understanding. Both boys had learned important lessons about friendship, patience, and empathy, and their bond had strengthened as a result. The palace itself, standing tall and majestic, seemed to reflect the calm and satisfaction of the day. Its walls, filled with centuries of history, had witnessed yet another story, a story not of grandeur or ceremony, but of human connection and learning. The children had experienced real emotions, faced small challenges, and emerged with a better understanding of themselves and each other. Camilla's son realized that growing up in a royal family meant more than etiquette or appearances. It meant learning to navigate emotions, relationships, and responsibilities with care. Back in the carriage, the boy looked out at the gardens, his mind replaying the events of the day. He remembered the rush of running, the surprise of colliding with Prince George, the gentle intervention of the guards, and the calm words of his mother. Each moment carried a lesson, and he understood that these lessons were more valuable than any game or prize. He felt a quiet sense of gratitude for the guidance he had received, for the patience of those around him, and for the chance to reflect and grow. Camilla smiled as she observed him, her heart full of love and pride. She knew that these moments, though small and seemingly simple, were shaping her son into a thoughtful, kind, and responsible individual. The palace had provided a backdrop for an unforgettable day of learning, but it was the real experiences, the emotions, reactions, and connections that had truly mattered. She reached over and gently squeezed his hand, reinforcing the bond between them, a silent acknowledgement of the growth that had taken place. As the carriage moved smoothly along the palace paths, the sun dipped lower, casting a warm, golden light over the gardens and buildings. The children had played, learned, and grown. Camilla's son had faced his own emotions, understood the impact of his actions, and experienced the power of forgiveness and empathy. Prince George had shown grace and patience, demonstrating that kindness and understanding could guide children through any situation. And in the end, the palace had witnessed another small but meaningful story, one that would remain in the hearts of those who experienced it. By the time the carriage reached home, Camilla's son felt a deep sense of contentment. He had faced challenges, learned lessons, and grown as a person, all within the span of a single day. He realized that true strength was not measured by speed, skill, or winning a game, but by the ability to understand others, act with kindness, and reflect on one's own actions. It was a lesson he would carry with him for years to come, one that would shape his relationships, his decisions, and his character.